Canton, Kansas. Population 625. Why would I, a 26-year-old college graduate, move here? There's no one else my age. The youngest residents are all at the local high school, which teaches about 50 kids at a time. Most of the surrounding area is farmland, but that's no different from the rest of Kansas. Flatter than a pancake, literally, and not a person for miles most of the time. Then, in the middle of nowhere lies Canton, a small town with a few shops in one neighborhood. And of the 20 students that graduate from high school every year, not a single one of them stays in the town. They're off to do bigger and better things in bigger and better places. Places nowhere near Canton. I'd reckon the average age of a resident here is about 70. I grew up in Winchester, which isn't far from Canton, and is an actual town with shops, people, and no farms. After graduating from their community college, I got a job as a farmhand for the Russell family, who were celebrities in McPherson County, which is where both Canton and Winchester reside. They were known for having the biggest, baddest silo in all of eastern Kansas named Big Bertha. Farmers from all around came to see it, where it stood 75 feet tall, made of aluminum, over 60 years old, and could weather any storm. Legend has it that the big tornado that hit some years ago went right over it, but didn't leave a scratch. The owner, Arnie Russell, denies it, but the neighbors say they know it was headed his way and had to have hit Big Bertha at some point. One of Big Bertha's oddities was its lid. Most silos' lids are convex, but Bertha's is flat. Arnie says that it was made this way so it could be kept clean, and he is quite the neat freak. He went up there every once in a while to wash it down with a hose and a bucket of watery soap. The silo has stairs that curve around the shell for easy access to the top. What he doesn't know is that I went up there when the night fell so I could stargaze, which is one of the best things about Canton. Because it's so isolated, light pollution is non-existent. As a result, we could see much more of the night sky than city folk. I went downtown and bought an old telescope from the pawn shop so I could see the moon, the stars and planets, galaxies in more detail. And usually I would go every Friday night or Saturday night if the sky wasn't clear enough on Friday. It was summertime, and as usual, the afternoon sun was horrendous. Sunscreen could only do so much to protect me as I guided Arnie's tractor along the field so he could plant seeds. I whacked some weeds in and around the barn, washed down one of the cows after it had rolled in some mud, and ate dinner at the local diner. I lived on a small farm in a small cabin next to Arnie's house. It was nothing special, but enough to keep me clean and well rested. I had a bed, a bathroom, and a TV. Nothing else. I stargazed from there most nights, but the silo was much better. Something about the height made you feel like you were part of the sky itself. At around 11, I made the 2-minute walk down to Big Bertha, walked up the rickety, ever-swaying stairs, and got to the silo lid. I set up the telescope and took a look around. It was clearer than usual. I could easily see the Milky Way. It stretched across the sky like a scar of dust and gas. Stars spread within it like glitter in a jar of murky water. Many of the planets in our solar system were visible that night. Mars and Venus were pale and yellowish with the naked eye, but materialized in their glory with the aid of the scope. I could even see Saturn. It could be seen with its rings if you even zoomed in enough with the lens. The moon was almost the second sun, and provided enough light to be able to see in the darkness. And the stars were dotted from the top of the sky down to the horizon. The constellations were easy to decipher. Orion, Dippers big and little, Leo, Cancer, Aries, all of them are out tonight. Many are afraid of the darkness because of what they cannot see in the shadows, but I'd argue you could see better at night than you can in the day. The stars, the moon, the planets, the galaxies, just a sliver of our universe. But this goes beyond space and time. Darkness is when the true nature of us all comes out. The party boys, the criminals, the corrupt politicians, the lovebirds. All of them act mostly at night. It also is when you learn certain truths. Some truths you wish weren't true. The truth I learned was so much worse than that. Now I'd spend an hour at that point looking around the black pool of space, taking pictures and sketching out some of the constellations on a notepad, when I saw one star glinting in a peculiar way. It was to the left of Orion, and when I looked at it, it was fading in and out, almost flashing. Now, I'd seen this before with the space station and thought maybe that's what I was seeing. But when I checked online for its location, I found that it wasn't visible that night in Kansas. I never put much stock in UFOs, but this seemed to fit the description of one. I looked up some reference images on my phone and found there wasn't supposed to be a star, planet, or anything celestial in that area. This was, without question, not any kind of interstellar body, and I found nothing about what it was. As I continued to stare at it, it seemed to grow, and the shape changed from an orb to more of a triangle. The shining went away, and the color became a solid white. The triangle started to swell, the sky itself appearing to fall away into the light. I snapped a few pictures, wanting to send this to someone to be investigated. As it grew, I could see Orion and the stars around it appear to bend backwards, as if they were being sucked into the light. My breathing picked up and I began to tremble because I realized what this reminded me of. The peeling back of a sticker. But there was no noise, no adhesive coming undone or pieces of the sky falling to the ground. There was nothing but silence. And with each second, space continued to fall back and the triangle became immense. It far surpassed the moon, the Milky Way, and everything I had ever seen at night. This wasn't an object. This was a part of reality itself. Was it a black hole? Was the universe coming to an end? And was I one of the unfortunate souls to witness the last nights? What the hell was I looking at? Every second and minute that passed, I saw this white triangle grow larger, but not wider. Like a sticker, it had walls that prevented it from consuming everything. The Milky Way, something we all knew for its vastness and beauty, simply folded backward into thin air. The whiteness was blinding, yet it did not shine on the earth, as if by design. At this point, I was having a full tilt mental breakdown, on the verge of screaming in horror as I watched either the ending of the universe or the truth of what it really was, a revelation that would drive many to suicide. I checked to see if I was dreaming, focusing on my hands and breathing. If I was dreaming, I would have more than 5 fingers on each hand and I would be able to breathe through my plugged nose. Dreams aren't quite like real life in those ways. Both reality checks revealed that I was not dreaming. I fell to the ground and continued to watch the now massive lit triangle form another wall, and become closer to the shape of a rectangle. The walls met at the corner and eventually it stopped. A white rectangle, pure white, a blinding white, now stretched across the sky. I was hyperventilating, my head in my hands, not wanting to look, desperately hoping that what I was seeing wasn't there. I snapped multiple pictures with my phone's camera and even took a video or two. Someone had to remember this. And for a few minutes, the white rectangle did nothing, I, meanwhile, was in tears. Tears of fear and confusion, wanting for this experience to be over, and for it all to have been a bizarre nightmare. And finally, the worst thing happened. An eye. A huge human eye looked through the rectangle. There was no skin or anything surrounding it. It was just a colorless eye. It was two-dimensional, moved and blinked rapidly, but looked calm nonetheless. It looked all around, at the sky, the ground, the roaming cows, and eventually, it looked at me. When my eyes met with its single eye, we locked onto each other. The eye stopped moving, stopped blinking, only staring. I was sweating profusely and wanting to run away from it, but it was too late now. If it had the power to peel back space itself, killing me would take no effort. The eye continued to stare back at me, and finally, it blinked. My heart fell once more, my ears popped from the anxiety, and a single sentence was planted into my mind. A sentence I didn't put there, that I didn't hear in my ears, but in my head, like an eternal monologue that I had no consent to.
Turn up the light pollution.
It spoke to me. Dear God, it spoke. And as soon as it spoke, the whole hole closed the same way it opened in just a second, and the stars, planets, and galaxies that were there before returned, only this time, they were slightly dimmer. The Milky Way wasn't as visible as it was earlier, and Venus could no longer be seen. I took my telescope and ran down the stairs, packed my things, and drove as fast as I could towards Kansas City, knowing the eye couldn't find me there. It could never look down upon a large city where everyone could see it, or, more accurately, where the light pollution was turned up to a max. I stayed in a hotel that night, but I'm not sure what the point was, as I couldn't sleep. I tried as hard as I could, but nothing would come of it. I just laid in bed until 8 in the morning, trying to understand what I saw. What was it? Who was it? What did any of this mean, and was it even real? I pulled out my phone and looked through the pictures, and sure enough, I found the horrible images I had taken that night. It was real, and I had proof. Or at least, I did. When I finally did go to sleep, I awoke to the pictures erased from my phone. So then I thought maybe it wasn't real, and I was just hallucinating. Maybe I had too much to drink the night before, despite that I only had 1 bottle of beer. I tried to brush it off, told Arnie a lie that I had a minor medical emergency, and drove back to Canton. For a few days, I tried to work as best as I could, the eye still a mist in my mind, hard to see but visible enough to make it difficult to keep moving, due to the possibility that it might have been real, small as that chance might be. Now, 3 days later, I finally brought myself to search around for accounts similar to mine. The sky peeling back, an eye searching around and then returning to the dark. I looked on every social media site, every paranormal forum, hell, anything I could find. There was nothing like my experience anywhere, except for one. One post that nobody replied to on a supernatural forum in the deep web. It was the same experience, word for word. A clearer than normal sky, the stars and the Milky Way pulling back into nothingness, a human eye appearing saying, "Turn up the light pollution," and then falling away into the night. And the worst part? The user's location was Canton. I'd seen enough. I packed my things once more, left a note saying I couldn't work for Arnie anymore, and drove back to Kansas City. Because as the eye says, there's plenty of light pollution. I won't have to see the eye anymore. I could at least pretend it's not there. I could pretend that our universe isn't some sort of test tube for an incomprehensible being that nobody else knows exists. Worst yet, I have no idea what it was. I have no idea what anything is anymore. All I know is that in Canton, Kansas, there is something that peeks out in the night from the stars. That is, if the stars are even real. How could something bend back the stars the way it did so easily? The only thing I could think of is that space isn't real, or at least more fragile than we thought it was, perhaps by design. Perhaps it's there to placate us, make us think there's something more, something to aim for, something unknown. We're always told that we fear the unknown, but sometimes what we do know could be so much worse than what we have yet to see. I sit in my apartment, my grip on reality, if reality even exists, quickly falling apart. My best guess is that we live in some sort of simulation or experiment controlled by a being none of us can understand. I look around at the world and wonder if any of it matters, if any of it is real, if the people are real, if their emotions are real, and if I myself am real. This place where I have lived all my life, where I learned to love, laugh, and cry, where I lost and gained so much, none of it is real. Why did I move to Canton, Kansas? To become one with nature, become one with the culture of my upbringing. That culture is farming, small town friendliness, and living by our own rules. That, unlike most people my age, is something I've always found endearing. But now, I have left it all behind to become the opposite, city dweller. Because in my view, if sticking my head in the sand brings me temporary sanity, then buy me a shovel. Is this unhealthy? Maybe. But I fear that if I don't keep digging, if I live too long with the idea of our reality being a plaything for someone nobody has ever met and is far superior to us, it may cost me my life. But as I continue to live, my fear of death comes closer to being outweighed by my fear of what life really is.